You're listening to Horror Movies and Shit with your host, Pedantic Jim and Pretentious Mark.
Is Chris Goodwin. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I am doing well. I love your T-shirt.
Oh, thank
by the
you.
way.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge basket case fan. There used to be a basket case poster there, but we just upgraded it with Drive. But yeah,
Nice.
You can't get much better than that. You got to go with the VHS version, though.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
VHS got a
grit.
Always the best.
It's got a grit to it that they sometimes cleaning it up's not the best thing for sure.
That's absolutely true.
You know,
I agree. So you have quite a few extreme horror titles attributed to you on IMDb, right? We have the 2 real movies, and then we have your newest film, Near, which I was lucky enough to watch last night.
Okay. Yep. What'd you think?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really interesting concept. I will say there was one very unlikable character that I was very happy to see go.
Who is that?
It was the mastermind behind the blackmailing. I can't remember her name at the moment.
Yep.
With the long burn. That was the most satisfying ending to a character. I loved it. I mean, as soon as I saw that tub of liquid, I knew somebody was going to get it. I just didn't know it would be her, and it was so satisfying for it to be her.
Yeah.
So I was curious, what was your inspiration for that film?
It's hard to say exactly. It's an idea I've been thinking of for a bit. I think, first of all, when I'm starting with a horror movie, I'm trying to think often how to do something a little different. I'm not, if I can't get into it, like some hook into it, that's sort of like a new take. I'm not interested so much in like 6 kids go to the woods and they all get killed one by one or something like that. Right. So Near sort of came out with that, and then the idea of, it's something I think we all feel, kind of like there's a scene early in the movie, for those who haven't seen it, where the main character is kind of talking about, I mean, the hook is anyone who gets too close to our character dies, and he's worried that it's expanding. So he's seeing all these horrible things that he's attributing to himself. And I think that's something that a lot of people probably feel one way or another, that, sometimes it doesn't have to be death. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It's just all these bad things happen, and you start wondering if maybe you're the nucleus to it. Often you're not. Right. Often it's just life being life. Sorry, just grab my tea here. But it's that feeling that, especially when things come in like, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and, it's a whole, rough year, a rough day, and you're just like, wow, am I to blame for all this? Am I cursed? Right. Am I this? So it sort of stemmed from that, like as the seed. But then that's one part of it. But then also the imagery is the next part. Okay, what can we do? Can we do anything that makes this a little different? And I mean, I'm a big, these days, over the last few years, huge fan of like the shot on video type horror movies from like the 80s and the 90s, like Twisted Issues and Blonde Death. And I just love when you kind of don't know where it's going, like you kind of don't know the death that's going to occur. Again, if you have Jason running around with a machete, you can kind of guess there's only so many things that they're going to die by. I thought it was a good way that we could kind of use it as a jumping off ground to just show some kind of weird stuff that you would normally see in something like shot on video. And then we're sort of pulled into our budget, right? So like there could be a Near 2 that has a lot more. I'd only ever do a sequel if it had a bit more money behind it, because a lot of the set pieces we could only pull off so much, right? Because when you start thinking of that
Right.
idea that that could happen to someone and things are sort of crumbling and anyone who comes close. I also didn't want to do anyone who comes close just sort of dies, as in their, again, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I didn't want anyone who comes close just sort of almost like it was a plague going around. They get sick, they die.
Right.
I thought it was more interesting if just something happens. Maybe a character turns on another character. Maybe one character just, as you know, like just you can kind of go anywhere and do anything. And I just think that's what I'm looking for when I'm watching a horror movie anyways, is just more off the, just an excuse to kind of do some weird stuff.
And I agree. So like a lot of the deaths that occurred in Nier were not in shot for shot, but like the instance where they would just turn and go off and do something else sort of reminded me a lot of like Village of the Damned.
Sure.
Where they could be influenced, but not. They're not just falling over dead. They're being influenced to go do something drastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I will say the scene in the woods where Hollis was in danger of getting hung. Not to give any spoilers, but that whole scene, the whole time, like it was super intense because you're just waiting for something to happen.
Right.
But and so like it kept going and it kept going, but it just kept building and building and building, and then the payoff when something finally does happen was tremendous. Like that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, was the discovery of what actually happened to all those people that were around him.
Right.
Like, I thought
and
that
we're
was
cutting.
So cool.
Well, thank you. I mean, a lot of that. I mean, the early part where they're actually like doing the hanging, everything like that. I thought those actors on that, like, they blew me away. We did that a little differently, where, I'm a huge fan of improv within barriers. That's sort of like the seeds we're playing with. I always figure that if you give a role to an actor, tell them to explore it, they're probably going to come up with something better than you do. If you're thinking of like, if you create just 40 characters and they're all exactly you, they're kind of just 40 versions of just a mini bit of you. So I love working with the actors and finding that out. So for that scene, what we did was, no one really knew each other too much, and I took each one separately and had a little one-on-one meeting with them, and we sort of talked about how we knew the catalyst of it was this guy's being hung and then we talked about how they would probably react to it, how they thought the character would. So it took us maybe a couple hours to go through each person, and no one knew what another person was. Then we yell action, and everything just came to life in all these different sort of like, it was one of those scenes that was like, kind of really magical as it was happening. And, neighbors are worried. They're like, don't hang the guy, blah, blah, blah. And, people from the street. So I feel that was like a big part of what made the second part, when we kind of see how what happened to them all, work really well. I like that scene a lot. But yeah, like you're saying, it's when it's too tied in, like if it's a zombie movie, you know that everyone's going to come, Chekhov's rifle, we know what's coming. It's, but if it's zombies, they're all just going to get bit and turn into zombies. So it's a little, a little bit more fun to just, for you at least not to know that part of the equation,
Right. And that was a little bit of what and not a little bit, but that's one of the things that I really liked about the movie in general, was you never knew how close they had to get to be affected.
Right. Yep.
No matter what the character thought, it was never 100% accurate. Like it could be, within a couple meters, it could be right next to them. And it depended, right? It varied a little bit. And I liked that because it helps build tension because you're expecting it, but it doesn't always pay off exactly when you think it's going to happen.
Exactly. And I appreciate that. And I hope too that there's enough left that it could all be in Hollis's head. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe this is just like
Yep.
the worst case of coincidental craziness ever. You know what I mean? And of course,
Right.
the movie probably takes more one side than the other, but I hope there's still just that sliver of, because again, that's what it feels like. You know, when it feels like 12 bad things are happening to you.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree. And that was one. So I'll be perfectly honest. I did have that thought several times. Like, is he really the catalyst for all of this, or is it just a horrible coincidence? Because we've all had those times when it just continues to build and build and build, and we never know. You never really know.
Exactly.
Everybody feels bad at some point about that kind of stuff. When my mother always called it the rules of three, but sometimes it's like
28.
9, 12,
Yeah, it
15.
can just, you know, and we've all had worse years,
exactly.
2 years, 3 years than other times where everything seems to be going right. It's like, you know, you feel like buying a lottery ticket. So it's, yeah, it's
right.
That's, you know, and at the end, I mean, I don't want to ruin the end, but at the end, I think that's hopefully left, you know, what maybe Hollis thinks of it. Yeah.
There's two ways I go with the end of the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, so I'll message you what my thoughts on that, because like I said, I don't want to spoil this, but this was because I have an interesting theory on the two different ways the end of the movie could go. I'm curious what your opinion is. So you also have on your IMDb page a film called Real. And I saw that, and I got to be honest, the last 20 minutes of that movie are intense. That's probably some of the most intense cinema I've seen.
I mean, that I can't take full. It's got my name, but that's totally Slasher Victim 666. He's kind of got his own thing going, and that is, it's pretty gruesome. Near has its moments that are intense, but what Slasher did with Real is, I would say, more for the extreme horror fans.
So even with Near, right? There is a lot of gore in the film, right? Because of the nature of the story. How difficult was it to pull off some of those special effects? Like the scene by the river with the girl, and even the end when everything goes, totally balls to the wall.
Yeah. So
how hard was it to pull those scenes off?
I've worked with these guys. I think maybe the first thing I did a spec trailer years ago called 50 Psycho, which you can. Yeah. So that's
I just
even
saw that on your IMDb page.
I think is it 2015 maybe in the IMDb? Doesn't matter, but it's even older than that. That's when we decided to release it. It was probably 2011, 2012, somewhere in that world. But it was basically it was a concept trailer, so we brought board to try to create something for a bigger movie, which we didn't end up making. So we just have the spec trailer for it, which we're like, okay, well, let's just release the trailer as is. It's on YouTube somewhere. It's kind of a throwback to like Trauma or whatever. Trauma meets maybe Maniac Cop. Little bit more, but had a bit more budget behind it than some of the found footage stuff. But that was the first time I worked with these effects guys who are just phenomenal. Directly Carlos, but you're part of Carlos Henrique, who's part of the Butcher Shop, and they do a lot of great stuff, a lot of stuff bigger budget wise than what I'm asking them to do. And so in something like Near, we bring them aboard to do the finale. All the stuff you see there is them. And then what we find is if the rest of the movie, if we can give enough kind of good stuff to get to the end, like I know a bit of makeup. I can do some stuff. What you saw by the river, I did. So I can do. Where
Nice.
my line is sort of crossed is where it comes to like true prosthetics, gore, blood, makeup. I'm not amazing, but I can kind of do my own. And then when there's stuff that, you really want to kind of give it to the audience, those guys come in and they knock it out of the park every time. And everyone loves seeing them work.
Yeah.
Everyone, when you're making a movie, everyone's kind of doing their own thing. As soon as they come in with all the craziness, you get a crowd around, and they're really great. They're worth checking out. Stuff they do just to see their amazing stuff. They did a movie recently
That's awesome.
that I haven't seen yet, but I heard the gore in it was pretty crazy, called Here for Blood, about
The one on Screambox with the wrestler. That was a great movie.
Yeah, that's all of them. They did the
special
whole
effects
thing.
in that were phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's great.
So they're awesome. I have to see it.
That's a fun movie. It's a lot of fun. That's actually, I got my first.
How is
Screambox
compared to like
Shudder? I heard so many good
stuff
things
like
about
that? Okay. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't use it that much, to be perfectly honest, but it's mostly because I concentrate on other stuff like AMC Plus, or the more mainstream ones. So I don't go on there looking for stuff that much. So
yeah,
not that they don't have the right offerings.
I see it all the time with Bloody Disgusting
as much as I probably should. So I'm curious. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're good. Yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time. I just never. I don't. I don't bring it up as much as I probably should, especially if I'm paying.
So many now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious, with Near is a found footage film. Is there a reason that you decided to do found footage? I mean, like, is it a genre that you really enjoy? Is it more of a budget constraint? Because I've heard that from some other people we've talked to, that we did found footage because it was easier on the budget.
It's a couple things. I do, again, one thing that I do love, to kind of go back to that root, was I'm really working on trying to explore this style of improv that I'm looking for. I come from writing scripts. I have tons of scripts. That's how we started. We made all these shorts. I just found there was a level, which can work, but a level of artificialness that, you think of an action film, a big building blows up and they say a one-liner right after. It's great. I love it like anyone else, but I figured there's enough people doing that. I wanted to try to get into something a little different. I've been researching and watching a lot of Mike Lee and Robert Altman, and these guys who were trying to, they both did things differently, but they're both trying to figure out a way to get an improv style into the piece. I know Mike Lee, he likes to do long rehearsals with everyone and kind of creates a script out of the rehearsals. What I try to do is kind of like I described in the hanging scene, is I like working with the actors. I love actors. I love actors probably more than anyone on set. They're my favorite. You often, I think those Hitchcock quotes about how actors are just cattle have sort of trickled down negatively into a lot of directors, and like, I just wish they'd do my stuff the way I want it. And so I love actors, and I start working with them and then try to just figure out who this character is. I like to give them the seeds, but then I like to let them grow the tree. And I have a movie coming up. I haven't started shooting, but started working on. It's probably, I got 2 to do before this, like, that are half done, but the one I haven't started that I want to do next. I want to try to explore this with a standard shot movie, not found footage, because it's like, okay, I think I've got this down enough, which how to make this work,
Okay.
that we can, with the right lenses, with the right lighting setups, we can give them the same freedom, but it will feel like a movie too. The great thing about found footage is you don't have as much pressure as far as like, if you tell someone, okay, do your own thing based off these sort of restrictions, they're not so much worried about a lighting cue or, oh, it's out of focus. I can actually add to things, it adds to sort of a rough and tumble nature to it.
Right.
Yeah. And I also think budget's huge. You have to, to go back to 50 Psycho, which had, again, I was hired to on that project, and originally what the backers wanted to do was a superhero spec trailer, right? And they had a bit of money behind it, but not a ton. And I was trying to tell them that, like, when you're doing something with superheroes, you're automatically going to be comparing yourself with like $250, $300 million movies. And if it looks anything less, you're letting your audience down. So you don't want to sort of, you don't want to shoot something that's going to look bad, like if you don't have the budget, right? So I said, let's make something more grindhousey, a little, we'll shoot it with nice cameras, we'll have all that, but we're not trying to just give it the amount of money they spent on CGI and the time and everything and the massive green screen rooms. You got to know what you're doing. And I think I see that often with sort of the micro budget and low budget movies and people just starting out, is I see a lot of talent with them, but sometimes I think they aren't thinking about how the audience is going to perceive it. And it's awesome that they got X, Y, or Z done, but it's the audience doesn't care, right? So they're going to watch the movie and go, wow, this just looks low budget, and they're trying to be some 90s erotic thriller, but this isn't working, So found footage, it's hard to complain about production. It works. It's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm a purist with found footage too, where I also take very seriously what it is. How did this movie come to be? What's going on? It doesn't make sense to me when I see a found footage movie and there's a score added without any reason why there's a score. So wait, they found this footage in the woods, they put it together, this is what happened, and now there's score added to it? Or, and that's why we like Near. I like the idea that Hollis is making the movie. That automatically gives you freedom to why there's a title in it, why there's score, why there's whatever. It makes logical sense. Have you seen Late Night with the Devil yet? Or so I don't know how you feel. I loved this, first of all, the production design and the aesthetics and the idea that you're watching this 70. I mean, just amazing. Really brought you in the world. But this is just me, and I know other people disagree, but I thought the ending kind of sold out what they had set to do without spoiling that movie, but how it switched into something else. I think you could have gave that same information, keeping with the found footage thing that you set out to make. Because now I'm out of the movie. Now I'm like, this is not a tape that was from the 70s. I don't know how you feel about that.
Right. So when I first saw the movie, there was one scene that happens in the studio where if they would have stopped the movie there, it would have been damn near perfect. But once they went beyond that, and then they added the additional storyline at the end, I was originally taken out of it a bit in the theaters. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense, and it made the rest of the movie a little bit different when you think about it as a whole. And I did kind of enjoy that also. While I didn't, as part of the movie going experience, it wasn't my favorite. But the more I thought about it, afterwards, it
it's still,
it did not
I would
lessen
still
my
say,
enjoyment of
a
the
recommended movie. And I did like where everything on a plot level, what everything was tying up to. I thought that was really good. This is
Right.
my own particular,
Yeah.
peccadillo when it comes to found footage. It's something I'm always thinking about on this end. Is just I want it to feel real. And you can get around. I mean, one of the greats is Cannibal Holocaust, right? Like, how it's half found footage and half not. Like that. Like when you're watching the footage that characters get,
Right.
I like that too. I think that makes sense because then we get kind of the best
Yep.
of both worlds. It's all the rules that are set up, but
Right.
yeah. So that's which can be on a production level can half drive you crazy because let's say you got someone who's running in the woods really fast and there's a tree branch sticking out and you're going to show their head running into a tree branch. It's a real action packed scene. You want that close up of, the camera's following them and they're going to hit this tree. You would love to put that camera right there so you can see the impact coming in, but you're like, I can't have that shot. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes it makes things actually harder than having the liberty of like, just getting coverage,
Well, it's harder if you're trying to be consistent.
Yes.
But a lot of movies will just throw it to the wind just to get the shot, right? They'll give up that that authenticity just to get that shot. Which it can in some instances take you out of it. And there's been one of my favorite like I'm a big slasher fan, right? I love slasher movies. So Friday the 13th, I absolutely love the movies, but one of my favorite scenes in Friday the 13th is in Jason Goes to Hell, when the opening scene when the girl's running through the woods in a towel. Like, they shoot her one way and she's just running through the woods, and then they show her from a different angle and you can see she's wearing sneakers now. And then they show her from a different angle, no sneakers. And I love that they continue to do it, so you can see that it's intentional, but it feels like it's supposed to be a mistake, and I loved that. But you have to be intentional with that stuff, because if you're just doing it to get a shot, it feels cheap. But when you set it up as like a shtick, like they did,
I couldn't agree more.
It feels okay.
When you think of something like, Jason Goes to Hell specifically, it has, especially with that opening before it turns into the leech thing, a very postmodern approach to it all. It's supposed to. It's something I'd put in that pre-post. Scream gets all the credit, but there were a lot of movies that paved the way for Scream, and whether you count all of Jason Goes to Hell, you at least have to count the beginning and the ending with the Freddy glove and that opening sequence there.
Right.
Like you said, intention is massive. They knew what they were doing. They're giving you that ride, and it totally works. So you're totally right. It's what they're trying to do. It's where I think, like, another thing I'm not a huge fan of, but then I'll give you an example of where I like it is, like, sometimes the glitching. I'm not a huge fan of found footage glitching because we're just in an era now where that doesn't really happen. The cameras anymore, they're not glitching all the time, in some movies it's just glitch. Okay, like this maybe once, but like all this time. But then I think something like I do like, not all perfect, but I do like a lot of the VHS series, and I think there's sort of a tongue-in-cheek approach to a lot of the stuff in there too. So when they are super glitch, but I kind of get, again, like you're saying with Jason, there's kind of a cheeky comment about found footage, and so it's kind of like, let's have fun with found footage, as opposed to, aren't I scaring you? Aren't I this? And so I super, I appreciate that. I think you couldn't have said it better. Intention is, in anything, like, it really is. It really is.
It's everything. Yeah, absolutely. And what I appreciated, so like when I saw Near, one of the things I appreciated is you could tell that you had a vision for this film and what the points you wanted to hit, and I don't know if anybody else is going to feel the same way, but I like that the way you mentioned that you like to plant seeds for an actor, and then you let them do their job, right? You pay them to act, you let them do their job, which is what any good manager or boss is supposed to do, rather than micromanagement. I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, in general, but like in Near, it's you keep it consistent throughout, so you can see how it creates a cohesive picture. Like you don't see any
Yeah.
better or worse performances from whether it's a major or a minor character, and it's all super consistent, and you can tell it's because the actors feel respected.
Yeah, it's,
100%.
I mean,
And I like that.
First of all, a couple things. One, I always think actors are smarter than me. So that's a good starting point, especially when it comes to their character.
Okay.
I just think
Right.
like ego in any budget, whether you're talking $2 or 200 million, you're ultimately making a movie. You're not doing brain surgery
Right.
on a child. So there's no need to like really have this like crazy ego. So that works. Now with Near, this was an amazing cast. I have to give them every role where we're kind of like, it doesn't matter. They're not in it too much. We'll see how they do. And everyone blew it out of the water. Like it was like, damn, they were amazing. They were amazing. And I will say, without naming names or projects or anything like that, I have had times where it doesn't go. Some people don't like working like that. That's just how it is. Actors are as different as directors, or as different as writers, and some they kind of get lost in that. And we've had it not work. And there's always a way out of it, because then you just start working with them and what you got, and you can change it on the fly to something that will be, you can see it in the, okay, this is not totally working from what we had intended. Like, okay, this just keeping it super rudimentary. This character's supposed to be loud and expressive, but they're timid and they can't do it. Okay, well, let's change the character now that they're timid and they're having a fight and they're not able to express it. Okay, now this is seeming believable, right? It's like you have to be able to pivot to what you're seeing, which is also why, again, I think the not being is tied down to it has to be like this, or it has to be, you'll see that a lot. And again, I'm a huge fan of student films. Like, I love the idea behind them. I always think like actors who are starting out, work with them. You don't know who's going to go where. You just don't know. But a flaw I see with student films is sometimes, and this is a lot, I don't know if they're teaching or just they haven't had much experience, but because I had a cousin who was in school, so I'd shadow a lot of these sets, and they would get so picky about it's there, not the, and the actor couldn't get that line quite right, and then they start melting down, and then the cast or crew starts kind of like slowly disrespecting, like they might have a subconscious mutiny happening right in front of them, and where I think if it was just like, yo, okay, you're not Patty Chayefsky, probably, maybe you are, but you probably aren't, just kind of see what the actor's saying and work with that, I say this on set all the time. It's like, we're driving to an island. I got the motor, but you guys are all directing where we're going. So you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to get us there, but you guys are all on the boat pointing in the direction, and I'll turn the motor accordingly, and we'll head that way, and we'll go this way, and you get crazy surprises. I know I'm going on here, but I'll give you one more example of this movie I got coming up. I started it during the pandemic, and then I got paused once things got back to normal, and I'm just finishing it off now. And it's, because no one could do anything, right? We're all trapped at home. So I thought of like, okay, well, what if people can, let's try to make something from home. I won't get into the plot too much or anything like that, but it was working with, there's someone from Russia in it, someone from New York, someone like all over the place. And I would tell them, okay, here's kind of what we need loosely. You shoot it and send me back the footage. and this movie is all happening within a pandemic. Like, there's a twist to it, but again, I'll keep it, because that would just be too boring. But basically, they got a framework, and they're sending me footage back, and I gave them the smallest details, and I would always be surprised in the positive sense. And it was like, oh my God. Like I told one actress, you're kind of, things have been going on, blah, blah, blah. And next thing I know, she sends back footage, and she set up a whole tent in her living room. She's got candles out, and she's roasting marshmallows on toothpicks because she's trying to simulate camping. And I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. It has a heavy comedy satirical vibe. And I was like, I wouldn't have come up with that, like it's just giving it to you. And it was like, it surprises like that constantly, so it's like you said, you hire actors for a reason. You trust them, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So how do you find actors for your projects? Like, do you go through a casting agent? Do you put out an open call?
Yeah,
what does that process look like for you?
It's a mixture of I might know someone. I also, even if I do a short film and it's an open call and everyone sends their stuff in, not sometimes, you get a lot of stuff that's not right for the role, but they're great actors. So I'll reach out to them and say, you're not right for this. Can I put your stuff on file for another piece? And then I might actually even write a piece, like a role for them, knowing what they're strong at and knowing what they're not. I always say everyone can act, even your Aunt Sally. The thing that differentiates everyone is range. So your Aunt Sally, her range might be like this, but she can still do Aunt Sally, right? Where if you get like a super great actor, they got here. So your job is just figuring out what the range is and working within it, So, and then there's open calls, and I'm not huge on, I know a lot of, from an acting perspective, think they need great stuff. Like, they sometimes think, oh, the short films I'm in aren't amazing, or this movie I made I'm not so proud of. It doesn't matter. Like, I've cast so many people from classroom, videos. This them do. If you can see that they're, if you have Daniel Day-Lewis in the worst movie in the world, you're still going to go, damn, that's Daniel Day-Lewis. He's pretty good, So it's and there's an old adage which I subscribe to fully, which is like, casting is acting. Like, once you cast, you have your movie. It's probably the most important part of the movie, is how you cast, and not just to go, oh, I'll have these people because whatever reason you really want to, like, even if you want your 6 friends, okay, take your 6 friends, but now, I grew up like anyone shooting backyard movies, and I remember I was 17, 18, and we shot this backyard movie, a huge epic project, and so we're all 17. We all look 17, and I had all my friends play these like gangsters with business suits on, and blah blah blah. And it looked horrible. There was nothing they could have done because the casting was so wrong. If I cast them as 6 kids who go out into the woods, or okay, maybe we got something here, but everything was against them. And they're talking about, I've been in the game too long, and blah, blah. It's like, you're damn well 17, So it's, casting is huge, and I take it super, the pressure's on that. I'd say casting and editing, that's your movie, The rest you can kind of fuck around with, and,
Right.
Do you
do your own editing too?
Is, that's what I always would say is the actual painting. Shooting is just getting the colors. You're collecting it all. You're doing that. Editing is, if you ask me what I'm the most proud of, I can get by on a lot of, like I was saying with makeup, I can do all right makeup. Editing is, I feel like I'm an editor at nature, which helps when we're shooting too, because I kind of see things more through an editing lens. And so often I'm a pretty quick shooter. Like we'll go 15 takes if we need 15 takes, but if we get it in 1 or 2, we got it. I can see what's going to be needed for the piece. Often actors are like, we just, we're not that deep into it yet. We're not that blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just, you got it. You got it. And that's from editing so much again. And if I go back to like that 17-year-old project, I'd shoot everything from 55 angles and 55 takes. And like, it's because I didn't know how it was going to edit together. And you just end up being bombarded with footage.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. I give lots of props to editors because I've, doing the podcast, just doing the audio editing, and now some of the video editing, it's not easy at all. So I totally give props to anybody that's good at it.
It's just something you do over and over. Like it's, I'm just going to hold on, just fill up my water real quick. Yeah, it's something you kind of, it's a practice makes perfect type scenario. And it does take a long time, and you often it's easy to cut things together as far as like, if you're cutting it really rudimentary, but often the piece will tell you as you're watching it. You can go, yeah, it's all right, but it's often going, okay, something else needs to be done here. I'll give you an example. You mentioned the tree sequence where you're seeing all the bodies around. That was not originally written to cut with Janine Ravanna doing the monologue at that point. Right. That was not the original intention, but so I cut together the one part. I got this part with Janine / Ravanna, and you just start going, okay, well, what if I mix this, and then you see it start to come to life. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work, and you just go, okay, off to something else. But it'd be easy just to go, okay, here's the part where we see all the bodies. Here's this part with Ravanna. But what I was finding was both of them were just a little, for lack of a better word, they were just too boring separately. And then when they meshed together, because I'm always paranoid of that. I'm hyper aware, from all of us, we watch movies, that if you do not have your audience attention for like every 5 seconds, they're picking up their phone, they're doing whatever, they're having it. There's so much entertainment, there's so much media. No one owes you anything. So you have to keep them hooked as much as you damn well can. And so that just works. So it's a lot of trial and error. So Near took, we're talking full shooting days, not in a row, because with a project like Near, there's a lot of moving parts, so you need a lot of prep for each shooting day, especially to get it all done in that. So the shooting days are about 5 weeks apart per shooting day, just due to the limited resources, and then they were 14, 16-hour shooting days. We got it done in about 6.5 shooting days, right? Shooting, right? Very quickest I've ever shot. It was challenging, but that's because you're setting up one unit. You already have the unit prepped at the next spot, so you're running to that. You couldn't do it in a row. You needed all the prep time, but that's still only 6.5 days. If we don't count the pre. Editing wise, it was about 5.5 months. Right. So you can like just edit it really quick, and that's me working, kind of being familiar with editing. Not my first rodeo, like making a lot of progress each day, but you're still just, should this go? Rewatching, this part's got to come out. can we make this any better? And it's slow. It's slow, and it's not everyone's
Right.
cup of tea. But you're sitting there with a tea or a coffee. You don't have any stress. It's nice. You're not, we gotta go. We gotta go. So there's a nice calming aspect to it too. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, how long does it take you? You said you edit these, like it's.
Yeah, I mean, I try and put out one episode a week, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it takes me two weeks to actually piece everything together. And that's just an hour and a half, 2 hours
but it's a long
of talking, really.
Exactly.
And sometimes I get pissed off at the video and I'll just shut it off. And I'll just do the audio.
And you can go just 2 hours, but that's just 2 hours. You're watching every minute, making sure that's fine. Not even doing anything, just watching it. You're down 2 hours. You know what I mean? And if it's not your full-time job, and even if it was, that's only 4 watches a day at 8 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like, it adds up so quickly.
Exactly.
It's not easy. And again, you can just throw something together and not even watch it, and whatever happens is whatever happens. But if you it's a slow process.
I'm not gonna lie, I've done episodes like that where I just fuck it, I'm just gonna put the intro and the outro and I'm done.
yeah
But this isn't a feature-length movie for sure. So I do see that you have a lot of shorts tied to your name. What made you decide to go from shorts to feature-length films?
Yeah, so it started with backyard stuff, and generally we would shoot, which isn't on IMDb. Like I'm old enough where, and we had a lot of dough. So I never even touched a video camera until I was like 19. And I bought a VX 2000, which was about $4 or $5,000. They shot some of the later Eric Stanzi stuff. I think the first Jackass film was shot with that camera. So it's kind of this was pre-HD, right? Okay. So just standard definition mini DV. So we right off the bat just started making full movies. None of them were good, of course. We were just figuring out how to like even frame and how editing works. So we did that for a while, and then it was like, okay, how do we take the next step? And so I teamed with this partner, and we started making these short films that were. The goal of the short films was we were going to, no matter how good the cast or crew were, we were going to completely get rid of them each short film and hire a completely different cast and crew for the next short film, just so we could learn how people work differently, so because you see how one sound guy works and you're like, okay, that's great, but let's see how another... but these short films were, because again, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just starting. Very expensive, very, very expensive. You'd be shocked. And, because we're got everything, track, steady cams, they're fully out there. Now, because we're just, relatively young, we were deluded enough to go, oh, we're like great auteurs, so we need to write these like pretentious as hell scripts that were like very artsy and just they looked good, like the actual footage looked good, but they were so soulless. And the irony is they were trying to they were trying desperately to have soul, but they just weren't. And that was a big lesson to me. So we did that for a few years of no one, kind of going back to like, no one owes you anything. No one cares really who you are. Like, and I'm talking like even on a bigger level, maybe not on like Tarantino level. People are going to follow a guy who's got a cult of personality like that so much, but like, even if you're making a $5, $6, $7 million movie, you don't have a name like that. no one cares. They got better things to do with their time, you know?
Right.
So when like no one would watch these movies, and it became quickly obvious they were more ego related than anything else. So yeah, we sort of had a separation of everyone we were working with, because I've always been a super horror fan,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I'm going to double down on this is what I want to do. I actually want to make sort of
Right.
kind of different stuff like that, and so that sort of led to that. And I'll say something like Near cost me probably, I mean, not me, it was backed. I didn't, the shorts I paid for, but just on a budget level, I probably got Near done for about half as much as one of those shorts cost. So it's like, I got a full movie.
Oh, wow.
Great makeup, like you said, all that stuff. It's
Right.
something, Near is still for an audience. You have to be a found footage fan. You have to be, it's for an audience still. Okay.
I don't know about that, because I'm not a
great
found footage fan,
yeah.
and I still enjoyed it. So there's that one and Frogman are probably the only two found footage movies that I've really enjoyed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that makes me happy. Because yeah, I mean, I obviously hope it can connect to more people, but I'm aware too of like there is a little bit of a cult of people who are like, as soon as they hear found footage, trash. Like there's kind of like you said with the slashers.
Yeah,
like same thing. Not watching, no, especially by like 87, 88. Like it was like, I don't care, we're done, it's over.
Right.
These are getting no, that makes me happy to hear. And but it all kind of proves what like there's at least people who are going to watch it, enjoy it, check it out, and if I try one of these shorts, which are now going on 12, 13, 14, I still, they played a couple small film fests, like, but I'm sure they were forgotten halfway through watching it. You know what I mean? Like, no one cares. No one cares. And
I don't know about that. I think they do, because I have a few friends that have been lucky enough to have conversations with you, tell me what a great guy you are and how much they love your stuff. So I just
had to I mean, just in the, and like a lot of like people who are just starting out, you have to get over the I'm Ingmar Bergman type mindset. It doesn't mean you just have to make schlock and lower everything down to the lowest common denominator. I'm huge into themes and what are we getting at and what's this movie saying, but you kind of, it's like a spoonful of sugar type deal. A movie has to be enjoyable. I find I love art house. I watch a ton of Antonioni, like really pretentious stuff, but generally you need you need the movie to work in both ways. So my favorite thing is when you can watch a movie, you can feel like you got an experience, but you also can take another step and start dissecting it. Maybe like Dawn of the Dead is a great example, right? You can just watch Dawn of the Dead. You can start to get in the consumerism aspect, Never seen Dawn of the Dead? You got to see that. You got to see that one.
No.
Oh, yes.
Mark gives me shit about it all the time, but I've not, and there's no reason for it. It's never come on my TV. Like I'm not avoiding it. There's no reason.
What about
it's just
Night of the Dead,
11
Dead,
for one reason or another?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Night of the Living Dead I've seen. Day of the Dead. Is it Day of the Dead?
Oh, that's Return of the Living Dead.
The one with Tarman.
Yeah.
What? Return of the Living Dead. I've seen that. Both of the two of those, 1 and 2. Mark has tried to get me into others, and then he tried to get me into giallo movies.
For a certain audience. For a certain audience.
No, thank you. Yeah, they definitely are. But found footage is too, right? But I think the reason that I liked Near so much, and without any spoilers, is I really, really liked the way Hollis developed and how he deals with what he perceives to be happening to him.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why that's why I like the ending so much.
Appreciate you saying that. That was, me working with Connor. We talked a lot of one interesting thing we did with him was I only told him, and I didn't do this for anyone else, but just him, and I told everyone, just don't even talk to him. I only wanted him to know so far. I did a little different of a style with him. I said, here's where you are here. Here's where you are here. On the next time, here's where you are here. I didn't want him to know. I just was worried if he knew how sort of dark Hollis got, he might be inclined, maybe even subconsciously, to give it hints at the beginning. And I just wanted him, which I couldn't, he couldn't have done it any better, just to inhabit him at that moment. Because, I mean, let's get real. He had the hardest job in the movie. The movie's on his back, So it's like, okay, let's not make this any more difficult. And I'm not also a huge fan of necessarily, and I know you'll get different arguments on this, on characters you have to love, like as far as people always go, there's no likable character. I'm like, not everything's about likable characters. I think you can like Hollis. I think you cannot. To me, it was much more important to try to, like, with working with Connor, let's create something that's more authentic to this guy. And again, to tie into when you give an actor that much responsibility, what they can do, it became maybe not in the first early in the movie, but by the time we were halfway through it, he had a lot of feedback over, I think he would do things a little differently. Like, I think Hollis would act like this and not like how you're suggesting. And I'd talk to him and go, yeah, you're right. Like, let's do it that way. So it's less important for me to make likable characters and more important to make characters that seem authentic and real. That's, to me, the paramount. It's like, who cares about, like, the cowboy with the white hat?
I mean, everybody. Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest. At some point, you just want to cheer for somebody's demise, like I did with Ravina. I was happy that happened. That was satisfying to me.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just need characters like that,
and it leaves more to you. I mean, one thing I will say, and again, this I don't want to sound too pretentious or anything like that, but I do think and again, I'm a fan of I love just movies, but I do think movies used to give you a lot more credit than they do now, whether that's with the trailer not explaining everything, whether that's more complex characters. Are we supposed to like Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver or not? Do you know, like, it's not being totally clear, and that makes it, to me, good stuff. And you see that in the 70s a lot and a little bit in the 80s, but I'd say only in the last 15 years or so, it's gotten really, maybe even 20. Not every movie, there's a ton of great stuff, but a lot of stuff is just like talking down to you and kind of giving you this, like, baby food type stuff. And a lot of the audience, unfortunately, and I can't even blame them, have been trained to think that's how movies are supposed to be. They're not supposed to. You're not supposed to have sort of like again, I watched this Altman movie the other day, That Cold Day in the Park, and I mean, I don't even think I'm really spoiling it because it's in IMDb synopsis, and it's a movie from the 60s. I mean, who's really... You've probably seen it, or you're not going to watch it. But it's this idea of this woman sort of going crazy for this guy, and it's sort of building up to this, and she's locked him in the house, and she does. I'll keep this quiet. She does something crazy, and then she comes out of the room, and the guy realizes she's crazy, and she's right there in his face, going like, "Oh, I love you, I love you, I love you," and we realize she's nuts. And this guy, for the first time, is realizing how crazy she is, and we cut to the credits. We don't know if does he get out of the house?
Okay.
Does he kill her? Does she kill him? And that I was an audience now would fucking hate that ending, and maybe an audience even then, but I thought you'd have to see the whole movie, but for what the movie was saying, it's like, it's not about that. It's talking about these characters, and it's letting you kind of do that. When you go to an art gallery and you're looking at paintings, you can hear a great art critic start telling you what the paintings mean. But when you're just looking at them, you're just looking at them. You know what I mean? You're not like, well, tell me what, Picasso is saying here. And maybe an art critic go, well, this is this and this is that. Maybe there's something there. But I don't see why movies have to be so, again, you don't want to go so far that way, but let them think about something when it's done, like give them a little.
So I have two movies that did that for me that I really enjoyed, and that was 2015's Darling. Have you seen it?
Is that the woman sequel? Darlin? Okay, this is a different movie.
No, it's Darling. Yeah, it's about it's a black and white film.
Yes, by Mickey Keating
from
Mickey
2015,
Keating.
And it's about a woman who goes
I have
to
seen
house.
That. Very Polanski-esque. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That. Yeah, it's not my typical fare, but I absolutely adored it. I thought it was great, and I love a good descent into madness, and that's what you get through the whole thing, right? And the other one is, I think it's 2018.
That one I don't even think I've heard of. I've seen Darling, Deep Dark. I don't. What's that one?
So Deep Dark is about an artist that moves into this shithole apartment, and he finds a talking hole in the wall.
I have seen that.
That begins to make art for him.
Yes, you're totally. I do know that one.
And they're the most bizarre movies, but they make you think, like, because Deep Dark goes exactly where you think it's going to go. Like, there's no surprises in that movie. You know exactly what's going to happen, exactly when it's going to happen. But it's so fun for me anyway, because like, it's just so bizarre. It goes to places you don't normally see in film. Like, most places won't go that dark, or most movies, I mean. And I love that. They don't all have to go crazy places like that, but when a movie does that, like, it brings you out of things, and I love that, whether people think it's a great movie or not. Especially, like, those two of my favorites.
Like, this is the other thing too. Not everything has to be like Citizen Kane, Sunset Boulevard. Sometimes, like, I always look like cinema is a baby art form. We are just getting warmed up on it, and to me, almost more important than whether this is a great piece of cinema is pushing what cinema could be, like pushing it out so people 60, 70, 80, 10,000 years can have a different look and different ideas. And I mean, I love, and my girlfriend will not watch this stuff, but I love a lot of, like, truly experimental shorts, like just shape and just whatever. And I get that they're not for everyone, but what I love with them is they're kind of, whether it's successful or not, they're going, cinema don't, like, I love Stan Brakhage Mothlight. That's one of my favorite pieces everywhere, where it's just, he took film, he got it's only about 3-4 minutes. He took all the moth wings of different moths and put them all actually on the film. And then he played it back through a projector. You're just seeing this, like, cavalcade of brown moths wings and everything. I get it why that's not for everyone, but when you see something like that, like, well, when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is almost led to, like, it almost looks like a Nine Inch Nails record from, like, the mid 90s or something. Like, it has that same feeling to it. So it's like he had to do that to open a door for something else. Or Kenneth Anger, you know, he's doing all these shorts,
Right.
and he's like, well, I'm going to put, like with Scorpio Rising or something, I'm going to put pop music over, you know, it was a lot of biker imagery and stuff like that. It's about a half-hour piece, and but no one had put pop music. It was all scores at that point. So when guys like Scorsese and stuff see it,
Right.
they go, oh, and he's openly said, oh, I should put pop music. And now that's like a Scorsese staple, right? And now it's a movie staple, like pop music. You can't picture movies without pop music. And so it's, and I mean pop, like music, and main, you know, not necessarily pop, but like rock, metal, whatever. Just music, yeah, not orchestral music.
Yeah. Right.
So Anger may only have the niche following, you know, but he had to do that. Forget the personal reasons, but just on a cinematic reason, to let other people go, hey, we haven't got all cinema figured out in 1955. There's still a lot more we can do. And, you know, so it's when you see stuff like that, like Deep Dark or Darling, and whether they change the whole game or just change like a couple minds, it's so key to keep pushing, you know. I mean, Maya Deren said in the 40s, and this just shows like how little we came in a lot of respects, that like movies are, and she was an experimental filmmaker, are pretty much just stuck at a point where their film plays. You know what I mean? And you see that maybe a little too often, you know. It's probably gotten a lot better, I would say. Like, eerily enough, the Blockbuster almost helped. It gets super in the weeds. But anyways, the point is, we have a responsibility to keep, as any filmmaker, if you got $10 or, you know, 10, 100, you know, 1,000 million, you know, you got to keep pushing things forward, you know. So I commend that, like, even on noble failures is what you call them, or something like that, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's fair. So I have a question about your stories, right? Do you have a story that you haven't made yet that you're dying to make?
There's a lot of I started writing, you know, I'm still looking for, trying to get some stuff published, a lot of short stories 6-7 years ago, due to the fear. So I'm trying to just improve that skill, that there's a chance I might not be able to get every single idea I have for movies made, you know. So at least I can, I'm talking, there's a lot, and some more than others. I have, like, I'd love to do this, I like to think most of them are stuff we haven't really seen, but you're also restricted a lot with budget. Even near the money came, it wasn't necessarily the movie I wanted to shoot next. I did have it in the hopper, this idea of this person, but with the budget, that was, you know, locked in. And this is the thing about movies, there's so much talk on every level. Oh, I can get you this money, I can get this, talk to this person. It's never ending, you know. But until, like, the money's actually in a bank account and you're actually, like, ready to shoot, it's all kind of just talk. So yeah, I did have a couple things I thought I would be shooting before this, but yeah, just, I'm hesitant to say too much about it, but I'd say there are a lot in.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, as much as I see, you know, me making horror movies and stuff like that, I like to, and this is of course up to the audience or whatever, but I had to pull it out to me. I consider myself, as egoish as it sounds, but almost as much as a satirist. You know, like, satire to me is like the you know, the stuff you're looking for. So that's kind of the hint of what a lot of the stories I'd like to go down. But a lot of different kinds of horror, all horror. Some stuff a lot more mainstream, but still different. It's not all gore. But again, it's how the money thing turns out.
Right. Yeah, that's. I mean, money's important when you're trying to make a film, for sure.
It's a big.
You sort of got to work around that.
It's a big deal, unfortunately. But found footage keeps you like, because again, obviously, this next piece that's going to be out next, it's called "They're Out There." It's found. That's the one I shot during the pandemic mostly, and through whatever. So it's yet another kind of found footage piece. So the good thing about found footage is it keeps you from, because that's probably the best example, like when no one can work, even with huge budgets, found footage keeps you working, keeps you coming up with new stuff, and you can probably put together something. I mean, They're Out There has no funding. It cost me practically, it was almost a throwback to how we used to make backyard movies, and just let's see what we can do.
Okay.
And it's not experimental viewing, but very, very experimental creating. Again, working with these actors from Russia, from wherever, and never meeting them, and having to create, directing people through Zooms, doing all, like, it just was very, very, very different. So you can always do stuff like that. You can always get creative and
I can imagine.
Get away from your budget, but we'll see. There's a thing, you always make someone money. That's what Wes Craven said. You should be able to get more money. That's the key to making movies. Make the guy who paid for it some money, and you'll probably get some more money. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's
Yeah, that's true. That's probably true. Is there anybody in the film industry that you are dying to work with that you haven't had a chance to work with yet?
Like, I respect a lot of people's work, and I mean, of course, the list is endless of actors I love and everything like that. But not getting into like names, there was one name that's sort of like, not like Johnny Depp, but they're an actor and they're known, and they were the producers or the EPs, the backers and everything, said we could get this person in near. And I actually turned it down because I was worried of what that person, not that they couldn't do it, they could kill it, but what they would represent to the audience. And I like the idea of using faces that no one had really seen too much. I generally cling to that a little more. Again, it's sort of the other side of things that are more like you should put someone in it because more people will watch it, of course, which is always a good thing. But they're less.
Yeah, of course.
I just love finding those diamonds in the rough of, like, and I don't mean like they're in the rough, but just, they're so good and just haven't got to be showcased too much. And, the audience is watching it with like zero baggage instead of watching a Ryan Gosling movie, then you're watching Ryan Gosling. But no, there's a lot of people I love and would, love to collaborate with. And again, I'm a big fan of blockbusters and trauma and, no budget movies. So it's like the list is endless of people who I respect in the game,
That's awesome. Like, I understand what you're saying, because there's something to be said in filmmaking, at least from a viewer's perspective, from my perspective anyway, with fresh faces and fresh takes on things, right? I mean, you could get the big names in a movie, but it doesn't mean that it's going to make the film any better. So sometimes it's better to just go for the performance rather than
you're absolutely right. And it can, eerily enough work against you. If you now again, these are names way, but let's just say Keanu Reeves decided to be in Near. Let's say he's got Connor's role. Now suddenly the audience is watching it through the lens of every movie Keanu Reeves have done in the past. And does it live up to The Matrix? Does it live up to Speed? Oh, wow, Keanu Reeves is, in a found footage movie. The baggage is like, it works against it. You know what I mean? Like it's just where when you're coming in again with all fresh faces, you're kind of coming from an unassuming position of I would rather someone think the movie's going to be horrible and be pleasantly surprised than someone coming in. I'm watching the new Keanu Reeves movie.
Right.
Their expectation. I mean, I could give you a real example, and I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if you have, but Long Legs. Have you seen that yet?
I don't want to see it. No.
That's the point I'm making.
I'm so sick of the hype. I don't want to. No matter what experience I have, I'm going to hate it because it's either going to be too overhyped or I'm just going to be so annoyed because of all the hype. Watching the whole thing, then I'm just going to hate it just based on principle.
Sorry, I cut you off. And I was going to say that's the exact point.
No, that's okay.
It's like the hype. I know some people love it. It's the greatest horror movie, and I haven't seen it. I don't know, but just going on, it had such a backlash by so many people as soon as it came because, like you said, the hype is through the roof. Where if the movie just like sort of got released modestly, bring it to the theaters, but just treat it like a normal movie. You'd go in expectations pretty low, and you go. I can tell that one movie I thought got a bad rap on a sort of a mainstream level was Cobweb. I don't know if you saw that one. Me too. Yeah. And
I love that movie.
So hated.
Yeah.
And I went and going, okay, this is like gonna be not good. And you go,
yep.
What are you talking about? This is a fun little movie,
Right. Yep. It is. But that's like we saw Sting, and then Infested both got huge hype, and I hated Sting. And Infested, the panic level was at an 11 through the whole movie, and it just got to be boring because I'm sick of watching people panic the whole time.
Yep.
So I didn't like either one of them. But then you see something like Cobweb that flies under the radar, and that was a surprise for me. I thought it was an interesting movie. I loved the different takes and the turns in the movie.
Way better to go in with those low expectations. I mean, you said you're a fan of slashers. Slashers are the same way. Like, if you're new, like say you're 17 years old right now, and you're just sort of falling in love with 80 slashers, and you hear about Friday the 13th, and you watch it, you might go, what? I don't get why this is such a thing. But then you might, pop on something not even super underground, but like The Prowler or something like that, and go in with very sort of modest expectations and go, wow, there's some like crazy death scenes in it and crazy this and phenomenal makeup. And hype is a very fickle thing. I mean, it's you don't.
Right. Well, for instance, like everybody hates remakes, right? But one of the scariest movies to me when I was a kid was My Bloody Valentine, the original. I thought it was intense. It scared the shit out of me. And then they made this sequel, My Bloody Valentine 3, or not the sequel, but the remake, My Bloody Valentine 3D. It was awful because the whole thing was all about the budget and how far the special effects could go. The storyline took a backseat, and that's what made the original so good.
It's a classic Canadian. Yeah, I mean, where are you right now, anyways? Florida? Okay, yeah. So,
Florida.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's us Canadians hold dear to all our Canadian flags. You'll always have Canadians go, "That's Canadian," So that's just so you know, that's we shot in Canada. But the little
Right.
loop around the effects guys, the butcher shop, they actually have the, in
Mhm.
My Bloody Valentine, when the girl's head gets pushed into the fountain, like they have that whole
Yep.
actual thing from the
Mhm.
movie. The actress, they gave it to the actress, then
Oh
they
wow.
befriended her, and so in their
Oh,
shot
that's
they actually
awesome.
have the screen used, prop from that. Yeah, it's
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
really
pretty
cool.
trippy. But yeah, great films.
That- So yeah, absolutely. So what are some of your inspirations to become a filmmaker? Like what movies really got you into wanting to be a
Um,
filmmaker?
yeah, it's just a slow process, I guess. Like I was always a movie geek. My mom is a horror fan, so it was watching
Mhm.
movies like way too. Like my grade one journals are like watching Friday the 13th tonight, and the teacher is like, "Should you be watching this?" And like, so like just always loved horror, but we also just watched movies, and um, then it was like,
Mhm.
so it was a lot of, when I was probably 9, 10, started working on a movie board game which never finished, and it was just always movies, and it's just growing, and
Right.
and then it just, you get everything at the video store, everything you can find there, like, the dramas, the actions, the thrillers. Then you start discovering art house cinema. Now you're ordering all this weird stuff, and then
Mhm.
you're just going further and further and further down until, I mean, I guess when I started
Yep.
seeing a lot of the real low budget horror, which I was like loving, stuff like a lot of Eric Stanze,
Mhm.
like Savage Harvest, Scrapbook. Um, I mean, this isn't a diss to him because I love those films, but it started going like, oh, maybe this is possible. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like,
Mhm.
when you're watching Blade
Yep.
Runner, you're not like, yeah, I could do that. You know what I mean? Like, it seems, it's like so easy to
Yeah.
comprehend.
Yeah.
Um, but this was like, oh, okay, you get a camera, you shoot
Right.
some stuff with your friends. Basket Case is another. We obsessed with Basket Case. We watch it on repeat, and you're like, wow, that's just a guy with a 16 millimeter
Yep.
camera running around New York. The, it's love it. Would never say
Mhm.
anything bad about it, but it's pretty rudimentary puppet work and makeup and like you go, oh, this might
Mhm.
be doable. And so getting even the camera was sort of a
Yep.
lark, and um, let's see what we can do. And this will sound, again, sad or egotistical, or I don't know, but uh, I've already super surpassed anything that I hoped to do. There was all like this. I know a lot of people get into this
Okay.
game and they're like, I need I need this thing, I need this, I need $20 million to shoot my grand movie. I need this. To me, it's always just been keep it fun, keep
Right.
pushing it forward, keep the art moving. I'm never going to stop, but it's just, let's see how far we can do, how much bigger
Right.
we can get, how much cooler stuff we can make. We're all like growing and learning, and everything. Just like every movie is, even the great.
Mhm.
I think Spielberg would be saying each movie he's learning something for the next movie, and so it's just keeping on that
Yeah.
path. And but there was no, as I hear it all the time,
Mhm.
from film, like as soon as I had my dad's 8 millimeter camera, I knew I was going to be a filmmaker and everything. And well, no, it wasn't that at all. It was,
Right.
let's coming at it from a much more modest approach of, let's just try to get better and better and better and better, and let's just see if we can keep doing this. And I think that way too, you're not carrying as much baggage of I've been doing this long enough now where I've worked with a lot of people 10, 12 years ago where they gave up after 2-3 years. They had in their head they were going to be the next big whatever. It never happened. And they're like, screw this. I've had actors acting for, 6 months. Like, just, not saying actors in near or anything, just talking to an actor or whatever, but they've been doing it for like 6 months. And they say that if I'm not popping by the end of the year, I'm giving this up, And it's like, wow, like, do you have any idea about what's going on out there? It's, so I almost think coming at it from the modest take we have has helped us, because we're not like, we're just, okay, on to the next one. Let's get it together, on to the next one. And we're not, wow, we've been doing it this long. Why don't we have our, why does Ari Aster get to make 2 movies and he's making this, and why don't we, and this whole thing's crooked and I hate everyone, and fuck this industry, and no, like, it's much more like, okay, let's this might clue you in a bit, and this is another cliche I say to everyone. I go, let's try to reconnect to what it was like playing house as kids, and how there was this real looseness to it, and there was no pressure to make the best house or anything. It was just creatively playing and having a good time. And that doesn't mean, because I'm not when we're shooting, it's lax as far as like communication, but it is, we work really fucking hard, probably harder than, because we're trying to get so much done. And so it's not, just chill out, or it's not like that, but it's the sort of the gasoline behind us is, let's make a really good movie here, not let's take over the world, or I just think it leads, and I say this to people too, like when I'm working with a new actor, I say, here's how this thing works. Stick with it, lose the expectations, and if you do it long enough, cool things will happen. I don't know what those cool things will be, but cool things will happen. And the more you get them out of your brain of what those cool things are, I'm going to be the number one star here, or I'm going to win an Oscar, or you're already playing a losing hand, because when a cool thing happens, you're going to go, that was cool, but I don't have the Oscar yet. You know what I mean? It's just keep with it, and the cool stuff will happen. And you're there is so many people trying to get through this little tunnel here, and not just movies, but in the arts in general, It's tough. Music, we were just at an art thing in like a painting thing in Toronto, like a street fair. There had to be 400 or 500 vendors all painting, all doing their, like, they all want to be Salvador Dali, you know what I mean? But there's that many, and that's just there at that time. How many more are at their home and at this? But stick with it. Cool stuff will happen. You'll sell some paintings. You might get invited to this place. You might do this. So I've found, just with that attitude, I keep getting positively surprised, instead of, there's no bitterness of, especially as you start to get a little older, like I just hit 40, right? So that's a big year for a lot of people. Like, well, hasn't hit since 40. I'm done. You know what I mean? This game's over. Time to be serious. Time to buckle down. It's
Time to grow up. No more pipe dreams.
Movie's not a $10 million movie yet. There's no point making it. So it's a little bit different of an approach. And sadly, I think some people, when I say that stuff to them, they don't I sometimes wish they'd take it more, because I see so much talent who I have worked with. They do give it up, and I'm like, damn, man, you are so fucking talented. Like, just stick with this. And when you don't know when things are even going to have your moment. Like, you know, you might not be the greatest movie ever, but you might have a cool ass fucking movie when you're 78. Who knows? You know what I mean? Just, but yeah. So that's kind of the way we.
And it's, our society has shifted, right? It used to be we would all play the long game, but now everybody's into it for the instant gratification, right? Everybody I should be famous right now. But like Mark and I, we're in our late 40s, and we started a podcast 2 years ago. And we've gotten to meet some really cool fucking people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad that we did this.
Okay.
We met at a horror convention, and we just started doing trivia. My partner says, you guys are really funny. You should be recording this, and that's how this started. And we've been so lucky with some of the people that we've gotten to talk to, and the movies we've gotten to see, and just it's been amazing. And that's what I keep telling. When this isn't fun anymore, and I'm not excited about it, then we're just going to stop, because that's the draw for me, right? I get excited when I get to talk to people like yourself, or some of my favorite splatterpunk authors, or some of my favorite urban fantasy authors when we talk about books.
Yeah.
Like that gets me excited. And like, it gets me out of the world, so I don't have to worry about my day job. I get to just concentrate on this and have fun with it. Whether it goes anywhere or not, I don't care. I just want to have fun, and I want to get to meet interesting people.
Taking myself out of the equation, but that's the cool thing, is the cool things happen. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, you're loving the splatterpunk stuff. Now you're talking to them.
Right.
Or if you guys have said, oh, fuck it, you got to be 19 years old and, blah, 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 to start some podcast. Like, no, there's no rules to any of this shit, and it's just sad that, like, I think people feel that, like, incredible pressure of the fame and the clicks. I mean, we're both lucky to be old enough where we can remember time before it. We're also young enough where we know what it is now.
Yeah.
We're not 80 confused by it. So we've seen both sides to the coin, and it makes it a little easier. But I feel for a lot of these youngsters, like, just what social media has done to their brain, and just thinking you got to be on all the time and posting all the time, and this has to be, and this didn't get as much attention as this, and I must be doing something wrong. And that starts, and we're not talking like, oh, fun, let me sort of pivot what I'm doing here, but really taking it on with their self-esteem and feeling like they're not worth something. Or, I mean, it's just, it's not so serious. Like, it just isn't. And a lot of times people are just their worst enemy, and they don't care about you as much. I always say with, like, Lady Gaga or whoever, Taylor Swift now. You go to Taylor Swift, besides, like, the crazy Swifties, but most people are going to go to a Taylor Swift show, and they're going to enjoy it for a few hours. This is Taylor Swiftie. Can't get any bigger with pop star. And they're going to leave, and they're going to continue their life. And that's Taylor Swift. So when you personalize that into you being Taylor Swift, no one really cares if your one post or your one thing didn't get as much attention as. They don't even care that much about Taylor Swift. You don't. Like, you're in this race with yourself. It's that simple. And that's what I mean. With going back to Nier, it's also like, that was the whole genesis of the Nova character too, right? Is like, she's an influencer, but doesn't really feel that she's worth anything. And then comes the, like, the self, I mean, no spoilers, it's the first scene in it, but, like, self-harm and all that. And with the razor blade.
That first scene was a rough one. With that. I was like, what is she doing?
I know.
What, why? Yeah.
And that's,
so, that was rough.
It's just, it truly makes me like I think about it often, is just like the whole social media thing, and it's on my brain quite a bit because I just think it's become part of how people are now. It was one thing when it was MySpace and Facebook in the early days. It was kind of just, okay, here's me on the internet. And now it's kind of trickled down into not even on social media, but how people see themselves in the real world. And I think it's just, it's just sad. I don't mean that pathetic. I mean, actually sad. Like it breaks my heart a little. But, you know, I think also too, on a positive note to it, we're just kind of getting used to it as a society. It's so new. It's so fresh. A lot of these people are just sort of the test dummies to it all, you know, and they're getting rid of likes more on things, and you can't see what, you know, they realize that's a problem for, you know,
right. And even like with us when I was younger, when MySpace first came about, right? It was always so, oh, look what I did to my background and the things I did.
No.
You know, back then we were doing HTML coding. We just did, it was just something fun, right? But you still get those experiences, and that's what a lot of these a lot of younger people nowadays are going to see. You know, when they get to be our age, they'll see, well, I got a lot of actually real life experience that I could be using, you know, because I know how to do all the video editing. I know how to do, you know, the lighting and the makeup, because I've been doing it online for God knows how long. And I think that's the part that I'm looking forward to, is seeing the current younger generation realize all of the skills that they're obtaining without
like
knowing it.
Marketing, one of the big, you know, like they're learning that, you know, and you can, there's nothing that you don't need that for. You're absolutely right. And that is a good point about MySpace too, is it was, there was so much coding involved, and like, you know, oh my God, I changed my background to a custom picture or something like that. And that was like, you know, cheers for the day and everything like that. It was great times. Yeah, but if we were just taking notes, we could be making billions right now. Exactly. So it's, you know, it's good and it's bad. And, you know, I'm personally, I'm almost feeling like, just on an artistic standpoint, that I'm almost through the influencer being the devil motif in anything I make. I feel like that was something like, I feel we're going a little too heavy on that now. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, and that's the thing. You actually made the influencer in Nier a sympathetic character. You felt bad for her because you could see the struggle she had, right? So, I mean, I get that. I had someone say that, and that I was very happy about. Like, there was a live streaming on a fest or something, and someone said, "Wow, like, I'm surprised Nova's the character I like the most." And I was like, that's good, because they do need, a little, just. And that's true. We get it. There can be annoying. Like, we get all that. It's been covered, you know? What's the other side of the coin, you know? Right. And that's really interesting too, because she's, like, in the movie, she's the one that gets taken advantage of, and that is truly victimized, right? Because of what the other three decide that they're going to do to better, or to make their financial situation better. So it is definitely a different situation, because most of the time you see an influencer in a film and people hate them for no reason, because they're terrible people. It happens. And she wasn't. She's just a normal person. And I think she even says it in the film. She even says it in the film where she, you know, I don't live on the internet. I'm just, I post and then, which is probably the majority of them. You know, there's of course assholes who are, have some mansion and, oops, sorry, just one sec, who got, you know, are some mansion in Hollywood, and, you know, they're dicks to everyone and blah, blah, blah. And there is that group, but the most of the largest they're just kids / young people, like just trying to. Sorry, just feeding my cat. They're just trying to do their thing.
worries.
They're doing what the culture says, and so that's what we were trying to do with that. I was very conscious of like, let's not make her this devil person, and all the stuff that'd be coming at you. Like Hall is thinking that like they're in love, and people trying to hustle you because of who you are, and blah blah blah. Like you're gonna have all that stuff with. I mean, with fame comes like a price. Like it's just not.
Yep, absolutely.
And even though it's like internet, like I don't know, like Mr. Beast, like huge on YouTube, he talks about, and I'm sure everyone's jealous of him, but he talks about how like once he was at 1 million subscribers, it wasn't bad because, people were, he'd go to Walmart and pretty much every time someone would recognize him, right? But he said once he got to the point he is now, he says he can't leave his studio. It's like crowds wherever he goes. He said people try to break into his house and follow him. So he's like a prisoner in this little bubble, and he's making tons of money, but it's still, it's a little sad. No, so it's
he
that,
can't enjoy himself.
and that's what he would say. He said, it's like, you kind of want to find that middle ground. Like once you get too known, it's not all, not all sunshine and roses, it's
right.
So that was that take, and I don't think I'll ever make anything again where the influencer is the devil. I've just seen like 5 or 10 movies this year where it's like, not see that they're coming out. The influencer here is this evil person, and this. It's like, okay, this is like so troped out at this point.
There's actually an audio book that I just listened to called "The Influencer," where almost literally the influencer is the devil. But I really enjoyed that story. That was a fun little slasher flick because you were not supposed to like him. He was written to be an unlikable character for a reason, and it really makes sense in that story.
So, that's a splatter.
I totally get your
splatterpunk here. Like
everybody,
I've been trying to get more. I grew up with Barker and all that sort of stuff, and I've been buying a few splatterpunk compilations. I'm reading Extreme Horror 1 right now. It's a mixed bag. But I read another one that was really good, Splatterpunk Forever. Like who are some of the big, like the authors who are like the top guys?
I'm not the person to ask because I'm brand new to it, but if you really want something that is absolutely vile, and I mean in all of the worst ways possible, The Dark Side of Hell by Philip C. Harrison III is probably the most vile book that I've ever read in my life.
And is it good? Like,
but I loved it. I was extremely proud of myself. The story is solid. And that's what I liked about that story is you don't like anybody in that book. No, not a single person in that book, including the victims. Do you feel sorry for at all? And I appreciated that little twist on it. Like you didn't feel bad that they were going through what they were going through because they're horrible human beings. And they make that clear. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. But there were 2 scenes, because I listened to the audiobook, that I had to skip because I do have some issues with SA, and there was another scene that was just too much for me. But I was so proud of myself that I got through the majority of that book because it was so gross. I do also have actually somebody that I consider a friend now, K.L. Allister, has a new book out called Carnivores, which is, and that book is about a man who joins an exclusive executive club at his job, and they just happen to
what was the author you said?
K.L. And that's all I'm going to say because K.L. Allister, Allister. If you want something that's just bloody, but a fun story, like So everybody tries to put a twist in their stories, right? But my buddy Tim King has written a book called Seven Rabbits, and it is a slasher. It's a slasher. It's super bloody, but like you know exactly where this book is going, and it doesn't stop. It's like a freight train,
Tim
and it's such a
King
quick read.
Rabbits, you said, or what was it? Seven Rabbits.
Seven Rabbits.
Gotcha.
Seven Rabbits. Yep. If you like more of like a novelette, like it's less a little over 100 pages. There's a book called The Pressure by Brian Dull, Dull, about a boy who gets migraines and they make him ultra violent.
The Pressure. Okay. Yep.
There's another one of my favorite books is called Writhe by Erica Summers and H.M. Wolz, Wolz.
What was the book? What title of that one again?
Yep. It's called Writhe, Writhe.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. And that's about a man whose brain gets infected with worms. And it drives him literally insane.
I gotta check some of these. Yeah, that's a good.
So those are some of my favorites right now.
I'm trying to get. I just realized I think I may. I mean, I love like Lansdale, Joe Lansdale, and stuff like that. And he sometimes dives into slivers of that. But I've been trying to get into more of the the subculture of it. You know what I mean?
I would be remiss if I didn't mention my buddy James Kane. He has a book called My Pet Werewolf, and it's bloody and violent, but it's not splatterpunk until you reach the third act of the book, and it almost goes there. But then he's got a prequel to that called Gunther that is full splatter, which is great.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome.
Are you active on TikTok
at all?
No,
I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say I have a few book talker friends that I follow, and they give me all the recommendations for.
I mean, I see. Well, I was hesitant because my girlfriend's on there, so I do see. Sometimes I'm scrolling through her account, and so I'm not on it, but I.
Yep. I'll send you a link to two of my friends that I get all my splatterpunk recommendations from. And then when you have, if she's scrolling, you can take a look because they read a lot more of it than I do.
Awesome.
And they're the people that filter it to me. Because there are certain things I won't read.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes
but they have no limit.
Pushes.
They will read anything.
You ever heard of that book, Haunted by Palahniuk? Chuck Palahniuk? So it was.
I have not read that one, no.
Yeah, big author.
I'm familiar
this
with
was,
the
I
author.
guess,
I
his
just haven't
horror
read that
book,
one.
And someone gave it to me, and I guess all these people go to a resort or something, and they all write a short story. So it's almost like a horror anthology, but we're getting each one.
Yep.
So the first story in it, Guts, and I read this cold. Again, this was a gift. I read it cold, and has some very intense scenes, which I'm hesitant to even talk about. But I felt lightheaded, and I went and I passed out, and I thought it was like a medical issue with me for months. I was like, oh, that day I must have not ate right or something like that. So because that me passing out there was connected to me reading it, I wasn't that inclined to pick up the book again. And so I was like, okay, let me just cheat and read the Wikipedia synopses just to see what the hell happened in the rest of this book. So I read it, and sure enough, it was like an epidemic of people passing out. There's been 80 or 90 confirmed cases of, him reading it in theaters and people falling and everything. Never had I experienced. I think if I was warned of that, I might have been more prepared. But it was
right.
I mean, reading that, I was like, oh my god, a book actually made me. And I don't I can handle the gore. You know what I mean? But it was just
Wow.
written in such a
Yeah,
way.
right.
It's and like so that ties into what you're saying.
Yeah,
Some of these authors,
that's
they
pretty
just.
insane.
I mean, I find reading does go further. I mean, I read this story last night, and it was just a short story, and it went so much further than any movie. Like you can't, books just can go there. There's a limit to what you can do with cinema.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't think a lot of people are totally prepped on it. They're like, movies are the devil. It's like, well, have you ever read some of these books? You know what I mean? This is like,
Right.
movies are like a taste of
Exactly.
it. You know?
Yeah. And that's so
Yep.
in the 80s, I was a
Yep.
huge Stephen King fan, right? So I loved The Shining. The Jack Nicholson The Shining. I even liked the
Yep. Yep.
90s version with Steven Weber, but I loved the book. So when they came out
Yep.
with Doctor Sleep, I was so excited, right? And I loved the book, and then I was so excited for the movie, and then I saw the
They
end of that
changed
movie
it.
and I was so pissed. I was so angry. So what they did is at the end of Doctor Sleep, they used the end of the book from the
Oh,
original The
I did
Shining
notice.
and
I
not
thought
the
that
end
was
from the
because
books
I've
of the
read The
Doctors.
Shining, the book, and I've seen Doctor Sleep, the movie, but I haven't
Yep.
read Doctor Sleep, the book.
Right.
So I thought it was
That
repeated.
that
Oh,
is not how
yeah, the
that
one
is
where
not
they're
how.
in the hospital and everything. Yeah,
Nope. Nope.
yeah.
Yep. Nope. They did not. They used the ending from the original The Shining where she's screaming false face, and everybody's okay. That's not how Doctor Sleep
Oh, I
ends.
gotta check that
The
out.
book is amazing, and it's so much bloodier and scarier than the movie. I was not happy with the actress that played Rose the Hat. Like I think she's great, and I think I've loved her in everything I've seen
Right,
her in, except that role. She was
right,
not the right person for that role, in my opinion. She wasn't menacing enough, and she wasn't scary. And it the whole vibe. Like I love Mike Flanagan, but that movie, it felt like a PG-13 version
right.
of
Yeah,
an NC
yeah,
17 movie, and I hated
yeah.
it.
No,
I
I mean, my
absolutely hated it.
girlfriend didn't make it to the end. We watched that together. She was like, she checked out, and she's read the original Shining,
Yeah,
but hasn't seen or hasn't read the. I mean, the thing
yeah,
with King though is like, because he's so prolific, there's some duds, but when he's on, he is fucking on. Do you know what I mean? And
oh
I
yeah,
mean, I'm pretty diehard Dark
yep,
Tower, which I know
I
is
do.
hit or miss with some people. But
Yep,
that's like, it's like a religion. We love the Dark Tower, and just yeah, all the. I mean, his early stuff
yep,
is all like, you know, fucking knock it out
yeah.
of the fucking park. You know what I mean? Really, really
It's
good.
fantastic.
Um,
Yep,
I don't know. I mean,
yep. I
okay,
wasn't a
yep,
fan of the Bachman years.
yep,
The whole where he was releasing the Richard Bachman stories. I wasn't a fan of those books. I like his early Stephen King. I wasn't a fan of the Bachman years, but
yep,
like
yep.
Dolores Claiborne was fantastic. The whole story. Rose Matter was perfectly on point. And then I didn't read a whole lot of him for a long time. And then I saw Doctor Sleep come out, and I was super excited. And I kid you not, he was on
Okay, I
point
gotta
in that
read
book. Like
this.
that's
Yeah,
old Stephen King.
I gotta read.
The way he
Yeah,
wrote. Yeah, you really should because
yeah.
you're
I
definitely
mean, I
not going to
left the
appreciate it from the
movie
movie at all, in my
not
opinion.
really
Anyway.
because I hadn't read the book. I didn't leave excited, or I was just kind of like, yeah. Like it was just, it felt a little
Right.
like a Stephen King mini series from back in the '90s, for the good and the
Yep.
bad of that.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a little bit of a
Yep.
nostalgic kick to go, oh, okay. And Flanagan again, I think his
Hmm.
Midnight Mass series was specifically like phenomenal.
Hmm.
You know, it's like vampires can
Yeah.
hit or miss
Absolutely.
with, but like that was like, oh, what an original take on bringing the church aspect in, and
Hmm.
just fucking brilliant. But yeah,
Yep.
it's
Yep. Agreed.
yeah, I didn't leave Doctor Sleep feeling that same way. I was like, okay, well, this is all right. It's all right.
Yeah. I get. I
Okay,
guarantee the book will
I
give
got to
you a
check
better
that
feeling
then.
for sure. 100%. Dude. I, Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, no problem.
But I do want to say thank you so much for sitting
No,
down and
but
talking to me.
great.
This
Thanks
has
for
been
having me.
awesome. I am
Thanks
so
for having
excited
me.
to have had this opportunity. Anytime. So you don't know this yet, but I actually am
Oh,
working on
really?
getting your
Okay.
buddy
Yeah,
slasher
yeah,
victim
yeah.
666 booked on the podcast. So I'll have the opportunity to talk to him about both
Okay.
the real
Yeah,
movies at that point. So I'm excited.
that's a different experience. um,
I'm sure it is. I'm looking forward to it. He's definitely interesting for sure. I've been
yeah,
messaging back and forth
yeah,
with him a
it's
little
a
bit, so I'm excited about
different
it.
vibe. But yeah, it's uh, and I think thing with Near too is like, I mean, it played at one online fest, and I think a lot of I saw it. There's a live chat going on, and like, oh, we're seeing the new slasher. I was like, no, slasher does the real movies. Like this is like, you know, it's hard to crawl
Right.
from out of his shadow, just because he's slasher, right? Um, but
Yeah. Well,
he's the
he's
same. But no,
he's
it's
definitely a
great to
force to
be
be reckoned
on,
with for
and
sure. But
yeah,
you,
it's sorry we got a little late too with
yeah,
the. I'm looking at my email. Still hasn't come in, to be honest with you. Um, yeah, that's wild.
that's insane.
Oh, no
And
worries, no worries.
I apologize for that.
No,
Like I
no
said, I
worries.
will not be using this. This platform will be going away. We'll be
No
going to
problem.
a more
No
standard
problem. Just
Zoom
happy
probably.
we're chatting. Yeah.
But I really appreciate. Oh yeah, absolutely. And this has been a blast. Like I really appreciate you being down to earth and opening up about the movie itself. Like this has
Yeah,
really been
likewise.
enlightening,
Great
and I've had a
talking to you.
great
I'm
time
gonna check out these
tonight
authors too.
chit chatting with you. So where? Oh yeah, absolutely. Please, and like I said, I'll send you some
Awesome.
links with some of my
Awesome.
favorite book talkers, so you can check out their recommendations because they will be much deeper into the. Anyway, it's gone now. They'll be much deeper into this Splatterpunk universe for sure. That'll definitely get you some better recommendations. Did I lose you? I think I did. Where's the chat? Nope. Where'd it go? Can you still hear me or no? Who's frozen? I can't tell if it's you or me. Oh, let me refresh